Hi everyone, we are Serlia. We are a language learning channel and we are beginning a Learn With Us series, and right now we are going to be focusing on Chinese. My name is Serenity.
And I'm Leah.
Today's video is for anyone who is wanting to learn Chinese, who knows a little about Chinese, or who wants to improve their Chinese.
Chinese is the #1 most spoken language in the world. It has a reputation of being very difficult for foreigners to learn, especially people who originally speak English. This video isn't just covering vocab or here are some Chinese words you need to learn or anything like that, because we'll have future videos for that. This video is just covering understanding the Chinese language. And here's a quick summary of what we'll be covering. So one thing will be the difference between different dialects in China and what are the different languages in China. There are many different spoken forms of Chinese, not just Chinese. It's not a language in itself. There's Mandarin, there's Cantonese, and we're going to be going into the difference between both of those. We're also going to be going into the difference between traditional and simplified characters. And also we're going to be answering a few questions that a lot of people have regarding learning Chinese, such as, is there a Chinese alphabet? And what is Pinyin? What are Chinese radicals? Chinese tones? And some differences between English and Chinese, other than the obvious being that they're two completely different languages. Well, we're going to go into that. But first, we're going to go into some disclaimers and credentials, but here is the timestamp if you want to skip forward to the lesson itself.
Quick little disclaimer here, we are not fluent in Chinese. The Learn With Me series is literally as stated, learn with me, rather us. We will be focusing on learning different languages, but we will have various fields of expertise. For example, I will be a Korean minor, and my friend Leah is a Chinese minor. As a result, we will each have our own niche languages that we will be taking charge of teaching. And as we learn more material, we will be sharing this material with you guys.
Once again, we are students in college. We're just college students and we're minoring in different languages. I'm minoring in Chinese. Serenity is minoring in Korean. We've got a little bit of an interesting dynamic going on, and she'll be focusing more on Korean-based videos, and maybe some Japanese and some other languages fit in there because she's a bit of a linguist herself. I have grown up speaking Chinese my entire life. I am half Chinese myself. I'm not fluent, but I have a decent understanding considering I've been speaking it for many, many years now. So I have more experience with speaking Mandarin in particular because I've been speaking it my entire life. My family speaks it. My mother's from Beijing. My grandparents live with us and they're also originally from Beijing. I can impart quite a bit of knowledge on you guys on that front.
A little bit on how I started to learn Chinese. When I was younger, I moved to Taiwan for a very short period of time, but I'll never forget it. I was so inspired and entranced by the beauty of the Chinese culture and the language, rather Taiwanese culture and language. So recently I took a few courses on how to pick up my Chinese again, and I learned how to read and write about 250 characters, but Leah is way more experienced than I am. Again, I will be focusing on Korean, Russian, French, Spanish, as well as some other languages in the future.
So first thing we want to establish here is Chinese isn't a language in and of itself. There are countless, I think about 300 languages in China. The most common one is Standard Chinese. Now that is what us Westerners call it, but it's actually just Northern dialect Mandarin. Beijing is the capital of China, and the Beijing dialect of Mandarin is what is now considered Standard Chinese by most Westerners, which, by the way, more than 70% of the Chinese population speak Mandarin. Now, another very common Chinese language is Cantonese. And if you've ever watched the movie Crazy Rich Asians, which I definitely recommend if you haven't watched it yet, you'll see that the rich people speak Mandarin. And the cooks in the household, they speak Cantonese. That's because Cantonese is kind of seen as more countryside, and people who don't have as much of an education normally speak Cantonese, kind of like the street talk. Mandarin, on the other hand, is what you learn when you go to school. So if you've had an education, you've probably learned Mandarin, and you've probably learned the Beijing dialect of Mandarin.
I would like to add on to what Leo was saying. China is actually one of the most linguistically diverse countries in the entire world. As she mentioned, there are over 300 different languages spoken there, approximately 302.
So there's also a lot of regional variety of the Chinese languages. Other than just the speaking dialects and the different languages that are spoken, there's a difference between how people write characters. We're going to go into characters real quick. There is no alphabet in the Chinese language, not like the Romanized Western languages, which most all of them have an alphabet: French, Spanish, English, etc. But Chinese, Mandarin, Cantonese, etc., they don't have an alphabet. Instead, we have characters, and there's actually 100,000 characters, but you don't need to memorize every single one of them. You only need to know 7,000 to be considered fluent, and 3,000 to have a conversational level of fluency, or just to read the newspaper. So the difference between types of characters, there's a traditional character, and there are simplified characters. And the traditional has been used for centuries, but the simplified is recent. It only got implemented in about 1950s, but just to make it easier for people to learn Chinese and people to write down Chinese characters. Simplified is used in Beijing and Shanghai, while traditional characters are used in Hong Kong, Taiwan, and Macau.
Also, in South Korea, not only do we write in Hangul, we also write in Hanja, which is the traditional form of Chinese characters. Most people in South Korea are able to read Korean and Hanja as well.
Chinese characters are made out of strokes, and there's 6 basic strokes, and you'll see it on the screen right here if I can get it in. And each of these strokes have different variants, and as you can see on the screen, they are a lot of variants, but the 6 basic strokes are the ones that they actually have names for. So if you were to read out to someone the stroke order, which by the way, stroke order is very important when writing Chinese characters, but if you were to tell them the exact names of the strokes in the order it's supposed to be written, you can pretty much tell anyone how to write a Chinese character. These strokes are the most basic unit of writing Chinese. Now the next unit above strokes are radicals, which make up compound characters. Now there are this number of radicals, and if you were to learn and memorize all these radicals, that will assist in you learning Chinese characters so much, because these radicals make up every single Chinese character that is pretty much in existence. So as long as you have a basic understanding of radicals, they can help you to the meaning and how to pronounce different characters when you see them. Now, Chinese characters are mostly compound characters other than the radicals. Compound characters are pretty much different radicals that are put together plus different strokes and combined. There's different types of compounds. There are meaning components, sound components, and empty components. So a meaning component is indication of what the meaning of the character could be. The sound component is there for just to tell you how to pronounce the character. And the third one, which is an empty component, that's just to differentiate that character from other similar sounding and similar looking characters. The linguistic terms for the meaning and the sound components are semantic components and phonetic components. The semantic component contributes to the meaning of the character, while the phonetic component contributes to the sound of how you would pronounce the character. Take the radical ma, which is horse. In the word mother, which is mama, you can see it used as a phonetic component. It doesn't contribute to the meaning. You're not calling your mom a horse, but it does contribute to how it sounds. Ma sounds like ma, so that gives you an indication of how to pronounce the word. Now, the radical in front of it is a radical for female. That character is there to give you indication of what it means. So it is indication that you are referring to a female. So that indicates the meaning, while the ma refers to the sound.
For all of the foreigners who are unable to read Chinese characters, don't worry. In 1958, the system called Pinyin was adopted and formerly taught in some schools to foreigners who could not yet read Chinese characters. Pinyin is the Romanized alphabet for Chinese. Okay, the issue with Pinyin is that some words will look the same and sound the same, like homophones, which can lead to some very embarrassing cultural misunderstandings. But depending on the context of the sentence, you'll be able to understand how to properly use certain words. And the benefits of actually understanding and knowing how to read and write Chinese characters is that you will be able to fully comprehend the context of these characters and their sounds when you're speaking.
For example, the word ta and ta in Pinyin look the exact same and sound the exact same. But there are 2 different meanings. One is he and the other one is she. You can only differentiate between the 2 depending on if you're actually pointing to the person or you're looking to the person. You can tell if they're female or male, or if you're reading the characters. And when looking at the characters, you'll see either ta or ta, and one will have a female compound to it and the other one will have a male compound to it, indicating whether it is a female or a male that you're referring to when you say ta, which is him or her, or he or she.
The main difference between Chinese and English, besides the fact that they're completely different languages and they do not look anything alike, besides Pinyin, is that English has plural, Chinese does not. There is no large difference between singular words and plural words in Chinese. Comparing Chinese to other languages, for example, like French, Chinese does not have different gender prefixes, such as if you're familiar with French or Spanish, there can be words like le or la or le, which can signify masculine, feminine, and plural for masculine and feminine. So Chinese is a very easy language to learn, although writing might be the greatest feat, as well as understanding how to properly intonate the tones when you're speaking. Chinese is a tonal language, and there are 5 official tones. And the grammar of Chinese, as I mentioned, is overall extremely simple, which is great for people who have difficulties comprehending complex grammatical structures. Chinese does not have ing endings like English does. This is called morphemes, the fancy word for it. Instead of saying surrounding, Chinese, well, because of the simple sentence structure, it would just be surround, for example. Additionally, Chinese has no articles, verb inflections, or plurals. Finally, one of my favorite aspects of Chinese is that it doesn't have any verb tenses. So unlike English, where we have a past, future, and present, Chinese has neither. Although there are particles that you can use in Chinese to signify something did occur in the past. We will get to that in the future.
Thank you so much for watching this video, and I hope you learned maybe a little bit and have a better understanding of how the Chinese language works and the differences between different Chinese languages such as Mandarin and Cantonese and traditional and simplified characters. And I hope we answered the question as well, whether Chinese or Mandarin specifically has an alphabet or not, and what Pinyin is. So if you're interested in learning any more, I hope you can check out any of our future videos, which we'll be having a series on the Chinese language, and it'll be more of a learn with us style. So as we learn new things about the language, we'll be sharing it with you guys. And as someone who has a lot of experience with speaking Mandarin, I think I'll be able to help you guys out quite a bit. And Serenity here, because of her experience with learning countless different languages, she'll be making her own series as well, focusing on Korean, Japanese, Russian, French, and anything else really.
Once again, thank you so much everyone for watching. Have a great day.
And hopefully we'll see you guys in the next video.
谢谢 for watching.